We're creating fresh memories for people in a neighborhood that truly, literally did not exist 10, 15 years ago. So everything that we do, and this is the filter that my team and I think through why and what we're doing.
Today, I have the Vice President, Brand and Experience of Boston Seaport, formerly the Editor-in-Chief of InStyle Magazine. He has also been named Out Magazine's Out 100, the Business of Fashion's Top 500, and Crain's 40 Under 40, a contributing editor of Vanity Fair and a writer for Architectural Digest. Welcome, Ariel Foxman.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
So glad to have you. We have known each other for a long time. We won't say how long. When you said
decades.
It's been decades. And you started in the magazine publishing world like myself, and you became editor-in-chief of InStyle, which was your first male InStyle editor-in-chief, kind of steered that magazine into what it became. And you've transitioned into the Seaport, which is a whole different experience. So why don't you take me through your story up until today? It's a long one, but you can.
Sure. It's a long story. So I'll take us through some highlights. Right. We started in publishing together when publishing was at least for me, like the highest aspiration of the way to reach the most people and inspire people, educate people, inform people, entertain people. And I was very fortunate to have a lot of great mentors, rose quite quickly in the industry and worked at InStyle and then worked at Condé Nast and other titles and was brought back to be a consultant on InStyle and made editor-in-chief. And I was editor-in-chief September 2008. And I remember at the time, my boss said it was a Time Inc. owned magazine, and Time Inc. had a history of having a bar cart that would go literally from floor to floor.
Mad Men days. Yep.
And it was long gone by the time I worked there. But she said, welcome, good luck, congratulations. The bar is closed. And what she meant by that was 2008, that the sort of golden age of magazines and publishing was sunsetting. And that this sort of free spending, huge budgets, crazy events, maybe wasn't even being dialed down, but like the writing was slowly appearing on the wall.
Right, it wasn't on the wall, yep.
Yeah, and from 2008 to 2014, we had continued growth and success. We expanded into digital and ultimately to social across platforms and grew and grew and grew. And then it started to really shrink. And I had to work with the company to shrink the enterprise 3 times.
Oh, no.
Efficiencies, consultants, even though we were wildly successful, it was never going to have a year better than the year it had before. It just was not where audiences and eyeballs were. And the influence of magazines, as we all know, has diminished. And when you're in a service and fashion journalism space, if you don't have influence, you are, every day is a day closer to its demise. And if you said to me in 2024, there would be no InStyle on newsstands, I would say that's impossible because it will probably be smaller, but that's the case. It's closed, right? So in 2016, I left. I told them, with many months ahead of time that I was going to leave. And I think they thought I was bluffing. Like, why would you leave? Right. This is this really cool, fun job. And I just feel like I'm a builder. I'm not a unpacker. Like I can work on efficiencies, but after a while, is so, I like to create things. I like to build teams of people who are inspiring and inspired. And I remember a friend said to me, you don't have to work in an industry that's always shrinking because the diminishing returns was it just like kind of weakened the soul, right? Like you were working, you were successful, and it got smaller and smaller. The package got smaller and smaller. And so I made the decision to leave. Again, I think they thought I was bluffing. I said, I'm going to close out the September issue, which was still then a very important ad buy. Michelle Obama was booked for our October issue. I said, I'm going to do that interview and then I'm going to sunset myself, not really knowing what I was going to be doing, but knowing full well that if I didn't leave magazines, commercial magazine publishing, that I would be a dinosaur very quickly. I was made editor-in-chief at quite a young age. So I didn't have the luxury of being a 50 or 55 or 60-year-old editor-in-chief where I could have imagined like, I'll run this out, like an Anna Wintour or there's nobody else like her that's still many of the people were much older and you could see them not pivoting. And why would they? but I was too young to not realize. So there's many chapters, hopefully, ahead for someone with my experience and at my age. So I left and became a consultant because I didn't know what I wanted to do next. And the work that I did at InStyle was very much about connecting audiences with ultimately commercial enterprise, right? Like getting you to want to buy something, to try something, to visit something, and to like inspire you to think that this world that's out there, this glamorous world that we see in so many ways and platforms is for you, right? And you can partake in it. And so I consulted mainly with what were ad clients at InStyle, now looking to do storytelling. And it was a perfect time because if you think like the middle of the 20 teens, everybody knew that you needed content. The platforms were proliferating and people didn't know how to create a content strategy. So I did that.
Sorry to interrupt, but now now we're about to go to digital. Were you dealing a lot with the digital aspects of it too and trying to transition them?
Yeah, mainly digital, trying to understand what people were doing in experiential marketing and making it make sense in terms of like amplification, turning success that they had digitally into other brand assets. Something would hit for somebody or they had some great ambassador or they did a really fun thing that turned, semi-viral and they wanted to extend that. So working with them and sort of plotting with them how you could plan and the way you could plan a magazine, planning the editorial, planning the sort of surprise and delight moments that audiences think are just kind of happening. And I worked from home before everybody worked from home.
Right.
And by the time COVID hit, I was already like, I don't know if I want to work from home anymore.
Right. Right. You're done.
Everyone's
starting.
Yeah. I was like, oh. And people are like, oh, is this something that can happen? I'm like, oh, yeah, there's a lot of technology. You'll see. But I miss the interactions with real people in real time. And, having worked in publishing, there's big hubs of people and really creative people and, finance and research and consumer marketing, all this. So I missed all those.
No, I very similar to yours, not to interrupt, but that those days of publishing when I worked there were fun. I mean, we were a Condé Nast.
You were hyped.
I like to say, you watch The Devil Wears Prada, and I was like, there's some truth to it. It was fun. It was exciting. We were traveling the world. I mean, guys, we were,
had a charge to it.
Kept you going.
You don't get at home.
No.
I had really dynamic clients and wonderful relationships. And it was nice to see that I'd always been a company guy. I'd always worked in, graduate college, went to work in a big office building. And it was nice to see that I could do that. Then COVID hit, of course, and people's priorities changed and shifted. And my husband, who's in education and who had been working for the mayor of the city of New York, Bill de Blasio, when COVID hit as his education guru. Everything changed, obviously. The school, this 1.2 million kids needed instruction and tablets, and they were using schools and facilities and staff in all these, unexpected ways. And his job became literally 24/7. And people say they work 24/7, but like this was,
really?
They would call at 3 in the morning, they would call at 5 in the morning. And we decided that on the end of it, we would be open to a new city. Having lived in New York, I had lived there 25 years. He had lived there, at least 15 years. And opportunity was presented to him in Boston for education. We live here in Boston, but he's in education tech. He was then working at a school for children with neurodivergence and brain trauma. Mm-hmm. And we thought, okay, Boston. Boston was a city that I knew from when I went to college here decades ago. And because it was COVID, when we were moving, there were very few hotels were open. And one hotel that was open was the Envoy, a wonderful hotel in the Seaport district. And when I was in school here, I visited, friends who still lived here after graduation. There was no Seaport. It was South Boston waterfront, and you didn't go. It was parking lots. It was wholesale seafood to trade. There was one restaurant. I mean, it was really no man's land. And I remember when Brandon, my husband, came to sort of pioneer where we might live, and he was with staffers from the previous job, and they said, "Oh, Seaport," and he was texting me. I said, "No, that's Quincy Market, Faneuil Hall. I don't want to live there." And he was like, "No, it's something else." I said, "No, there's no such thing as Seaport. What do you, I was so."
You're right. You
had such a vision.
Right.
It was. It hadn't been there for a long time, and so. Anyway, we ended up staying at the Envoy, which is in Seaport. We stayed there 3 times. And there was something about the neighborhood that felt familiar. It felt urban, having lived in Manhattan for many years, like, oh, I didn't need to get into a car to go get coffee. There were some tall buildings, there was water. I could see the Boston skyline. And incredibly, you couldn't really gauge a lot of traffic, pedestrian traffic because of COVID in general in the city. Whenever we would see Seaport felt diverse. It felt like you were getting a full age range of people, different ethnicities, tourists. Like you could tell like some students were coming. It's an interesting neighborhood too, because you do have residents, you do have people coming into offices. You have a lot of mixed use. You have some people who are sort of snowbirds who live there part-time. It's a waterfront. So you get a full mix. And we thought, okay, as a diverse family, my husband is Cuban-American, my child is as well. We're Jewish, we're gay. I thought this is a place we could live and feel like we would just sort of like fall in and be comfortable. We moved in 2021, lived there, and instantly, my marketing mind and my sort of editorial mind could see very clearly this didn't happen organically, this neighborhood. There's someone very thoughtful behind. Yeah, it's very deliberate. And not in a Disney sort of way, but like, I remember seeing you lock your bike on the bike rack. They had Seaport, like kind of a logo, not even a logo, like a Seaport sort of art piece, that would repeat itself. And I thought, you don't really see this in other neighborhoods here in Boston. And it just little clues along the way that felt
very thought out. I had, like I was telling earlier, I've just discovered the Seaport as well as just Boston in general with my daughter. You could see the new developments. Obviously, people put thought into this. It's very organized. Yeah. You can actually walk. I like going to Boston now because living in probably like New York, it's an easy New York. Everything's easier than Manhattan.
Exactly.
Like a city, you got everything, but you don't have as much stress as you might. You have
millions of people crushing on you.
Exactly. Every single day.
Thousands of people.
Yeah.
You have wonderful food. You really have everything. And it's, especially as a parent of a young child, it's like incredibly easy to navigate places. And so I kept my eye out. I knew then that WS Development was the developers who were behind, not the whole Seaport, not even the port that I lived in, because we don't operate the waterfront, which is where our first apartment was. But we integrated ourselves into the neighborhood. There's a lot of activations. There was a lot of art. And over time, I was introduced to folks there, and they asked me if I wanted to help them think about the director of marketing position. And like myself, they were also like, well, you're a magazine person. We know your product, but is this a right fit? And ultimately, we decided collectively that the tools and sort of perspective and mindset that you have to have as a successful editorial person are very similar to the ones that they would want in building out the neighborhood, right? Like, how do you make something aspirational but accessible? And that's everything from look and feel to like nuts and bolts. Like, what is the message? How clear is the message? Where is the message repeating itself? What does the calendar look like, right? So if I wasn't planning editorial calendars, planning activation calendars, and it's a new hub for retail and for eating and dining and entertainment in a way that has really sort of broken the mold in Boston. People who will tell you, you go to Newbury Street to shop, you may go to Cambridge for some food, you go, to Dorchester for all sorts of cuisine and Seaport is kind of pulling all of these things together and in a bona fide neighborhood that doesn't compete, but is additive for Boston, which is a new kind of mindset in Boston that there's enough people and enough interest and enough vitality to support a whole other district of these things. And sure enough, that's the case. And so because I have a background in fashion and getting people to shop specifically, joked that I said, I'm like making a magazine, but in 4 dimensions, you have the right pacing, you have to have the right surprise and delight, you have to have some novelty, you have to have some tried and true brands. And Seaport is a neighborhood that has been able to attract first to Boston retailers, which, is not something I was familiar with in New York, right? Everyone wants to be in New York City somewhere, somehow. Yeah. But folks have not necessarily considered Boston, or they have a store on Newbury and it didn't do well, or whatever it is. But like Alo Yoga's first store in Boston opened in Seaport. Todd Snyder's first store in Boston opened in Seaport. F1 Arcade, which is a London and UK wide enterprise where you come and it's like a high-end experience of drinking and dining, and you sit in simulators, is opening in April in Seaport. The first, not only Boston, Yeah, it's going to be amazing. And it's first to the United States. It's coming to Boston Seaport. It's not even coming to New York or Vegas or Miami first. So it's a very exciting place. And so I bring those skills and I do this work. I work with an incredible marketing team. We work cross-functionally with development and construction and leasing. Of course, we don't do it all. And that's how I landed here.
Wow.
And it's been an education and it's been a real delight. It really has. I feel very lucky that I hate the word pivot because I think, you're always pivoting every day in whatever job you're doing.
It's almost an evolution. I think for all of us, who worked in magazine, I think, and I embrace my years at the magazines, and people are like, when I still will go to a meeting and I say I worked at Condé Nast, they'll be like, there's a certain expectation. My wife says, oh, like you act like you went to Harvard by saying you went to Condé Nast. It
is the Harvard of publishing. Yeah.
Right. And you bring that discipline, same thing with timings. We did a lot with you guys. There's that expectation, a level of professionalism, presentations that are just, I still don't see everywhere. It was expected. You showed up at every meeting a certain way. You showed up, you didn't just wing it. Rarely from event.
At a certain taste level and a certain, an assumption of that being informed.
Yeah.
About what's happening, what's come before, what's breaking, what's interesting, what's relevant, what needs to grow, like that level of refinement. And I don't mean that exclusively, just like a level of sophistication of like being prepared. And it's funny that you say that your wife says it's like you talk about Condé Nast like you went to Harvard, because when I moved to WS Development, somebody who doesn't understand development said to me, like, what's this company like? And I said, yes and no, but it's like the Condé Nast of development.
Oh, okay.
And, it was a shorthand for, professionalism, great taste, aspiration, bringing people along, an interest in art and science equally,
you had to know it all.
Respect for marketing.
Yeah, you had to. But Jim, I think, if we go back to the days when, when we were at details, I was on the event side, you were, editorial side. And when we crossed paths many times, but, I had to know in America, every cool restaurant, every cool club, and we were young, right? We had to know everything cool going on. And the great thing is back then we actually had the access to get into those places too, because of the name. Yeah. And then when I transitioned, I went from there after they closed details, I went over to Condé Nast Traveler. It changed my perspective on everything because now it was much older. And then I had to know everything cool in Hong Kong. I had to know everything cool in Asia. I'm like, this opened my eyes, and, staying at the Ritz-Carlton because they're an advertiser. I'm like, all right, twist my arm. Yeah. But
right.
I had both worlds. And I think like you, I try to bring all these things back to our clients too. So going back to you at the Seaport, how do you explain to, say, a new retailer, a new restaurant, why they would come to the Seaport? Because it's all about experiences. I know you started the holiday market. We can talk about that a little bit too. But what is the story you're going out and telling people, and about what experience are you bringing to the public when you talk about the Seaport?
It's a really fascinating story because Boston is, the oldest city. It has it's got the first public park and the first underground transportation, the first college, in the US. It's the first of everything, which means it's old, right? And that's much of it is its charm, and you think about Boston, you think about Beacon Hill, you think about the Freedom Trail, you think about cobblestones and bricks, and that's appealing or not to a retailer, right? Like, Boston is not yet for all retailers a must, like Miami or LA, just because of sheer volume of those other cities, right? So you have to tell a story about Boston that is both evocative of what Boston is, but also really explain to them, like I had to learn myself when I was looking for a place to live here, that there's innovation. Now, people understand that because of MIT and Kendall Square and much of the new life science and tech world is happening in Boston, namely in Seaport. Our company just opened a first building for Amazon, who's moved its headquarters, New England headquarters here. It has a second building. We just opened a building for Foundation Medicine, a cancer research company. And there are many others like that in the neighborhood. You have to tell them it's a story of old and new. And unlike other places in Boston or other places in very established sort of like well-trodden shopping neighborhoods like a West Village or, a Beverly Hills or whatever it is, you don't have to retrofit yourself into what already exists. Seaport is a lot of really amazing, blank, usable imaginable space.
Right.
And so that's very appealing. And for Boston, Seaport is incredibly hybrid in the sense that you have tens of thousands of people who live there full time. This is their neighborhood. This is where they buy their groceries. This is, where they shop for books. This is what they do. This is their pharmacy. Many, many, many buildings have migrated their people to offices in Seaport because Seaport offers so many amenities. And so you have people coming in, even in a clunky return to office that we've all seen. Seaport has had a huge rebound of people coming to Seaport.
You have everything.
We're all better. You have parks. You have world-class restaurants coming. You have small restaurants opening. We have Black-owned businesses that are opening. We just opened a jazz club called Grace by Nia that was so successful in its 8 months is now going to be at Foxwoods. People see the heartbeat, and it's not exclusive, right? It's not like this is the only place to be in Boston, but it's a brand new enterprise in Boston that everyone can be a part of and everyone can be. So if you're a retailer and you're thinking, I want to try something new. I want to be in a place where the folks in the neighborhood, folks who are visiting, folks who are in the region know this is the neighborhood for what's new and next. You want to be in Seaport. So that's the story to tell. And we support them with experiential marketing. So we have a slate of about 500 free events throughout the year. Everything from fitness here. We have the largest fitness series in Boston, to public art, to speakers, to concerts, to kids events, whatever it is, free. Because even though it's a new neighborhood, you got to get people to want to come there and spend some time there and explore.
Oh, yeah.
And we offer that as a backdrop. It's an amenity to Bostonians, but for a retailer or a restaurant or an office that's thinking of coming, that's an amenity for their employees. But also that means, okay, people are coming. So you mentioned the holiday market. In its third year, 1.2 million visitors came in 7 weeks. That's like more than, so
you were responsible
and so
for that,
these
right?
folks.
You created?
Yeah, so we're responsible for that. We have an incredible partner out of New York called the Maker Show that does Bryant Park. And we built it here and, we pick the vendors and we create the whole experience, the look and feel of the creative and the messaging and the parking signs. I mean, everything, right? And it drew 1.2 million people in 7 weeks. And so those folks are coming into the neighborhood, maybe for the first time, maybe they came last year, maybe they work in the neighborhood and so like they're coming from all areas in all frequencies. And that lifts everything in the neighborhood. So we're able to tell that story. And we don't do a holiday market every season, obviously, but we do that sort of programming kind of writ large. And there's never really, maybe January's are kind of reset month, but outside of January, where everyone's hibernating, we're busy. In fact, I just shared with our tenants, here's the slate of spring, summer. And someone was like, whoa. Somebody said, I'm going to have to take half days on a Friday to make sure I can come to this yoga class. Like they want to experience Seaport, as a late. So.
No, and I can say it firsthand, having my daughter in Boston, she lives on TikTok and social media. She will send me things in Boston and a lot of it's at the Seaport. Like I knew about the holiday market.
I love that.
And I was surprised you guys didn't have one prior to this, or if you did, nobody heard about it. I was like, yeah, seems like a no-brainer for New York. We have too many of them now. Right. And they're not all good. But, she was sending me TikToks on the holiday fair, on the holiday market and, walking through. And then her friends set up a weekend where they were going to go, they're gathering and they're eating and they have a whole plan of what they're doing for the day. That's
what Seaport is for people in the region. That is, you either live here or work here. And so you're using it on a regular or weekly basis, or you're making a trip to come into Seaport because there's an experience, there's an activation, there's a new restaurant, and our activations are free. So that's another enticement, right? There are other holiday markets in the region that charge. There's one in South Washington, so Boston, but that's not our vibe right now because we're still building a neighborhood and we want it to feel inviting and accessible.
Yeah, I mean, so like a lot of other cities, building up the areas that nobody was thinking about before, it's interesting.
The thing that I love the most about it is we're creating, and this is true for your daughter as well, we're creating fresh memories for people in a neighborhood that truly, literally did not exist 10, 15 years ago. So everything that we do, and this is the filter that my team and I think through why and what we're doing, like, will people have a core memory of this? Will this, because in the absence of a neighborhood, people had a feeling about it, right? Any Uber driver takes you to Seaport, anyone you talk to will tell you the first thing out of their mouth is, it was parking lots, there was nothing here. That won't be the case, 10 years from now, 15 years from now. So because it's new, people have a conventional wisdom about it, whether they want to embrace it or not. But once we get you there, right? If you've come to our holiday market and you've had a stroopwafel and you've done this and you want to come back next year, well, then Seaport isn't a place that was just parking lots. Seaport's where I go to that fun holiday market, or I had that great bowl of udon, or I work in an office with cancer researchers, and we've done this incredible thing. And then we've gone out to celebrate. All of those things that are happening in the neighborhood are fresh memories for people. And so it's a big responsibility for my team to make sure.
You're building something.
What is the experience? Yeah. How seamless is it? Right. So that we don't hijack the memory with an inconvenience or a confusion or, a bad experience. So it's a very cool luxury that we get to sort of like approach the work with. And I think the same was true in publishing, right? Like we were trying to create dramatic moments, whether they were in your imagination or experience, that would then inspire you to want to repeat and participate.
Right. And it wasn't just the printed magazine, it was everything connected. And I'm sure same thing with the Seaport. It's not just the stores and the shops and and a place to live. It is, like you said, the experience in the holiday market. I know, particularly going to the Seaport, I think I was the one who kind of, outside of my daughter going to the holiday market, I think I was the one who pushed it. It's like, my wife and daughter's like, if you make me go down to Newbury Street again and walk into an H&M, I think I cannot do this strip again. I've seen I can get every one of these stores in New York City. Literally, I don't need to be here. It's nice and all. I recommend it. We go, and that's
it's charming. It has its appeal for sure. Yeah.
Right. It was fun. I say
it's not everything.
Right. I say let's try a new neighborhood, and we literally tried the neighborhood. And like I said, my daughter knew the neighborhood from the holiday fair, but she hadn't checked out the restaurants, and so we did our research. And I was happy to we go to Nantucket. In the summer for about a week. So you had your Stubbies and your Lola 42 that we've eaten in Nantucket that I was like, oh, look at that. I know Stubbies. They got the best.
At our Cisco brewery, Cisco does a beer garden in the spring and summers. Yeah.
So those are perfect. So, like I said, I think there's so much more to discover. And I think you're doing a great job of just kind of, it's interesting to say you're treating it like a magazine and experience and building these memories that I think, stick with people and creating new memories. So looking back at your career, from magazines to here, you've made this transition. What do you think that you wish you know now that you wish you knew then?
I think I would have liked to know that things can shift much more quickly than I imagined. I was thoughtful enough to know that I needed to switch gears, but it's a very hard thing to tell a young person. Like the things that are not always going to be around, right. And our generation has seen such incredible transformation. Digitally, technology, transportation, everything, right? Like we are that last generation of, people who didn't, I went to the movies, I looked at the paper, I saw the Times, I called a hotline, I showed up, I hope there were tickets, all those things.
For the movie.
So, yeah, right. Oh, it's sold out. I guess we'll try next weekend, So, I appreciate that we were the generation that didn't have all that convenience, but I think it's very hard to tell people when they're young, like this aspiration you have is not just a goal that you're setting for yourself, but you also have to be mindful of is this a goal worth achieving? Because the whole backdrop is always changing.
Yes.
And I think when I was young, it was very clear to me and very definite. Magazines were cool. This was a thing. This will always be a thing. Right. This was a way to interact with a lot of people and to be informed, to be in the know and be part of that energy. And the only pressure I put up was on myself. What's my career trajectory? How am I doing? Am I performing? Am I advancing? And never really thinking, what's the long-term strategy here? And so I think I would have loved to have known that more then. But I think what's really interesting, and I think I've always known this as a man who took over a women's magazine after only 2 female editors who were much older than myself. I knew that I then had transferable skills that weren't entirely endemic to the job. And that if you could always have that approach of curiosity, clarity, creativity, like you can work in so many aspects. And so because I was able to be in that role and not only run a successful enterprise, but also edit magazine articles about like the best bras and best beauty buys and all these things that are very specific to an audience, I always kind of knew that I could apply skills elsewhere. Now the trick is getting other people to see that in you and not be lazy and fill a hole with a peg, right? So I was very fortunate to come to Boston, be in the situation where those were people at WS Development who had looked, as I understand it, for quite some time for a very conventional person. It's a marketing job. They should have this marketing experience. They should probably have worked in development, but we're not finding what they were looking for. And ultimately we're like, maybe we need not a magazine person, but we're open to somebody who has applicable skills with a totally different perspective. And I think that's what people should always know, right? Like you're not your job. You're not even your industry. You're the things that you're good at. And you should always be thinking like, what are these things applicable to? And like, I'm older than this sort of side hustle economy, the sort of rise of that, but I've always been doing that too. Like, as you said in my intro, I do these things. I write for Architectural Digest because
you're still writing at the magazine, right? You're still writing for Arch Digest and Vanity Fair. Absolutely.
Yeah. And I still contribute to other titles. And I like that because it forces me to stay knowledgeable. It forces me to understand where taste, as a concept moves. And it always connects me with other people, right? So I think knowing that your skills are applicable and thinking about your career in that way, and knowing also that as consumers and creators that we all are, we think we know what marketing is. We think we know what great content is. And you may be really sort of a natural at it, but like there is a whole skill set to doing it well for a large amount of people for a concerted goal and target. Right. And I think being clear on what those skills are, I always made sure I knew those skills, whether that was like media buying or out of home, considerations or all these things that were shifting, because it's not enough to just be like, hey, I'm really good at this because I enjoy it. That's not. And I learned that in working in development, like, oh, you have to stay on the refinement of the skills, right, to make sure that you're relevant.
No, I agree. I mean, even me starting this podcast, I was like, hell no, I'm not doing it. And then it was ability. It's like, well, let's take the people I know like yourself and the skills and let's talk to, and I'm learning so much from people like yourself that we've all been doing this, but we've shifted around. And, we talk about it. You were very involved in fashion at InStyle. And I too, back in the fashion, even that's changed, and it's like, it happened last week and I was like, did it happen? It's like, yeah, it happened. It happened in New York, but it used to be a thing. And I think, like you said, I think we get stuck in our bubble, and I think too, when we were in the magazine world, the world revolved around us. We thought, there was nothing else better.
More for worse than for better. Yeah.
Right. And it was cool, but there are other industries. When you say something at real estate, they're like, oh, that's stodgy old. I mean, one of my biggest clients at the Empire State Building, who would have thought? But, we do the same thing. We bring some of those skills from the magazine and exhibits and all that. And we're working with Star Wars actually in Empire State Building, cool. Mixing it together. So I'm getting all these toys into our office right now that everybody wants to play with. But who would have thought that the two would mix together? But that's, as a real estate company, they don't want the typical things. They want to see what else is there? Their goal, how do you attract people, not just tenants, but how do you attract consumers? Because the Empire State Building has the observation deck. How do you get consumers here and get them excited? Because it's like anything else, there's competition. They have to stand out.
And how do you create like a new affinity and a new memory for people? To erase the memory or to add to the memory of like, oh, I went to the Empire State Building when I was 6.
Exactly.
Or it's a boring real estate icon, but okay, I can see it from afar. We're like, oh, I actually have this really cool thing, or they're really speaking to people in the way that they want to be, enjoying their time, like that kind of thing, that kind of magic that we are asked to create for brands or places is so exciting, and the audience is so hungry for it.
Yeah,
Like,
and they're excited.
like
And
people want to capture it so in so many ways, right? Like we used to put out a magazine and it was like millions of people read it, great, and then it was thrown into the garbage, and millions of people waited for the next issue. But it was just millions of people, if you were lucky,
right.
1 to 2 million people. Right now, it's like you can create something in Boston Seaport, and like your daughter sees it at her university, then you see it in New York, then you've talked about it to somebody, another client, and you can show it instantly what the experience could have been like. And I think that proliferation of audience is like, for me, that's like
Huge.
a candy shop. That's so exciting.
Right.
And so when they said, do you want to work in a neighborhood? I was like, yeah, because there's no boundary really. It's been really, really magical working there. So I feel very, very fortunate.
Well, I'm happy for you. It's great to hear this. So tell me anything you want to share that's coming up at the Seaport, or anything else that you want to share, a new article that you're writing or something you're excited about. Knowing this is probably coming out around May, you want to share?
Well, I would say I can't tell you what articles are coming out yet, but I can share that if you are coming to Boston, or you're thinking of being in the region, if you're coming to P-Town, or you're going to Nantucket or Martha's Vineyard, or anywhere on the Cape, or you're coming to look at colleges, or you're bringing your child, into school. So many people come in around May, June. If you're coming for graduation,
right,
be sure to stop at Boston Seaport. If you knew Boston, you won't recognize it. If you've been here and you are looking for something new to do, come. We have such incredible programming throughout the summer. We'll have a summer market on weekends, and we do all sorts of new art activations. There's always new stores and restaurants open. We were talking about Yume, which just opened, which is a big sort of a hot wait online udon place. I mean, there's just so much that's opening. The Museum of Ice Cream will be opening. F1 Arcade, which is, first the US will have opened. Check out Putt Shack. We have an Alamo that just opened. I mean, it's incredible, but it's really about just walking around through our public realms with these beautiful parks. We're right on the water. You can see, East Boston, which is just beautiful in the summer, and ICA is, I could go on and on, but if you're coming to Boston, make sure to stop in the Seaport. And it's 8 minutes from the airport.
And actually, it's actually surprisingly easier. It's easier to get to. It's not like you have to go through the city.
It's super easy. Yeah.
You can skirt around the outside, and you have it. I looked at the calendar. It's all online. Very easy to navigate and figure out what's going on and what you plan your day.
Follow us at Seaport Boss on Instagram, Seaport BOS, or BostonSeaport.xyz for our calendar of events, which is beyond what WS does. It's we are sort of the broadcaster of everything that's all things Seaport.
Cool. And then how would somebody follow you if they want to see what you're doing?
Well, I'm at Ariel Foxman on Instagram. I'm old school. And now Instagram is old school. I'm Ariel Foxman on Instagram. I pretty much, if you want to see my family life or my work life or any of the new articles that I publish.
That's right. The new articles, right. And then you obviously are on LinkedIn if somebody wants to follow the stuff you're doing there too.
Please, yes.
Okay. Well, this has all been amazing. Thank you so much. It's great to reconnect with you after all these years. And
so wonderful.
And like I said, I'm still discovering Boston when I saw you were doing what you're doing, and how you're taking these magazines and your knowledge of marketing and experiences, pushing it into like the real world and 3D worlds, and not just a pop-up, but it's like something that lasts, a little longer than a week. It's great to hear that, and just sharing in the success. And like I said, I'm getting this buzz from the location that I needed to know the backstory. So I hope
I appreciate it. It's so good to reconnect, and it's been an inspiration to watch your work evolve and grow over time. It's like, I point to your work all the time to our team. I said, Mark does it really great. One day we'll work with you. Hopefully. Yeah.
I appreciate it. So talk to you later.
Okay.
Thank you for listening. Be sure to sign up for our email newsletter at markstevanagency.com and subscribe and comment on your favorite podcast app. This is creating the perfect experience where passion meets inspiration.